This edition of Forge and Anvil in the Van is brought to you by our supporters at Substack. If you wish to join them, go to forgeandanvil.substack.com. We appreciate your support. Well, good morning, everyone, or afternoon, evening, whenever you're consuming this podcast. It is Monday, and I wanted to give you an important update on some legislation being passed in Tennessee, all about red flag laws. Before I do, though, I had the opportunity to listen to Chris Ann Hall speak over the weekend, along with some other great people who are joining her. Our friend Terry Lynn Weaver actually sang the national anthem at that event. Got to meet Megan from the pamphleteer, as well as Ray. Ray, I really appreciate you and your support of the show. You are incredible. I wanted to give you that shout out. And so many other people. Chris Ann Hall talked all about nullification. And if you've never listened to Chris Ann Hall speak, I recommend it. She is a constitutional expert from Florida. She's done a lot of traveling, teaching people all about state and national constitutional law and just understanding proper civics and doing that from a Christian perspective. So I highly recommend checking out some of her work and some of her books sometime. Without further ado, though, let's go ahead and get into the news. So this is actually a article from our friends over at the Tennessee Conservative News by our friend Adelia Kirchner. And this is actually an article that came out on Friday, but it's important for you to get the update today because it has to do with legislation that was passed in the House that is now going to be going to the Senate of Tennessee, the Tennessee Senate, that is. And if you contact your senators today, you may be able to make a big difference on whether or not this passes. Red flag gun bill to expand mandatory reporting passes in Tennessee House. A red flag gun bill to expand mandatory reporting laws for mental health professionals was passed on the floor of the Tennessee House of Representatives on Thursday by a 79-7 vote. This will be the second time that House Bill 1625 HB 1625, sponsored by Rep. Jason Zachary of Knoxville, has passed on the House floor. The legislation was passed in the House for the first time during the legislature's special session back in August of 2023. However, the Senate chose not to act on the bill at that time as efforts were made to quickly adjourn what many deemed to be an unnecessary meeting of the General Assembly. So just to give you a little bit of a recap, that was a special session that the governor called in response to the shooting of the Covenant School by the transgender shooter. So for those of you who don't remember, after that shooting, there was a whole bunch of pressure for the General Assembly of Tennessee to pass gun control. And so Bill Lee, along with the support of the SBC's Brent Leatherwood, actually called to have a special session come in, and the House, as the article stated, actually passed this same red flag law, but the Senate did not. And a lot of that was because there was national attention on the General Assembly. Well, right now, it's regular, boring, old, normal year of legislation. So they have a better shot at actually passing this because less people are paying attention to it. So that's partially why I thought it was so important to include this in today's episode. Let's go ahead and read on. Members, you'll recognize this piece of legislation, Rep. Zachary addressed his colleagues. We passed this during the special session. The other chamber chose not to work that week. So we're here again passing this through committee and now back on the House floor. Yes, and of course, all of Tennessee is very thankful that that other chamber decided not to work that week, because basically when the chambers aren't working, that's when our freedoms are most secure. Anyways, continuing on. HB 1625, if made law, would expand current Tennessee code requiring mental health professionals to report a patient to law enforcement 988 or a local crisis response service if they determine that that patient to have communicated an intent, quote, for actual threat of bodily harm, end quote, against an individual or group of people. Critics have brought up concerns about the fact that the legislation also provides mental health professionals with civic, criminal, and regulatory immunity, giving the subjective way that a mental health professional could perceive someone to be a threat. So really, your therapist could ultimately decide that you are a threat and report you, and there's really no way of holding your therapist accountable for that. So this is the reason why a lot of people who are well-meaning think that gun control is necessary, at least some form of regulations. First of all, I think there's a Christian argument for the fact that it is breaking the law of the land, which is the Constitution. And for all those people that constantly want to feign Romans 13, they're quick to forget that the Constitution is the law of the land, and the Constitution specifically says that the people are the supreme ruler, not the president, not your governor, not your legislatures, but the people. But aside from that argument, another argument that I think is really important for well-meaning people to understand, these types of laws will actually keep veterans, for example, from seeking mental health assistance, of whether they have PTSD or something to that effect, because they are scared that their constitutional rights will get taken from them if they, let's say a veteran comes to a therapist and talks to them about how they have night terrors. That person's not going to want to actually show up to therapy because they're going to think that their therapist is going to make them lose their gun rights. An otherwise trusting, law-abiding citizen who needs some mental health help will not get that help. So that's another argument. There's many other that I could make, but that's just a couple quick ones for you to think about when talking to someone who's well-meaning but is in support of red flag laws. Let's go ahead and continue on. This will strengthen duty to warn, provide some clarity, and ensure that mental health practitioners do not have to call law enforcement when a patient makes a threat to them, said Rep. Zachary. One amendment to the bill was passed on the House floor. The language of the bill previously stated that a mental health professional must report if he/she has determined or reasonably should have determined that the service recipient has the apparent ability to commit such an act. As amended, the language further reads, and is likely to carry out the threat unless prevented from doing so. With no discussion or objection, House members proceeded to vote, and HB 1625 was passed with 79 ayes and 7 noes. A bipartisan collection of representatives voted in favor of the bill. So when Democrats and Republicans shake hands, you can almost always guarantee that your rights are screwed. So here's the representatives that voted for it: Alexander, Baum, Ben, Boyd, Bricken, Bolso, Burkhart, Butler, Camper, Capley, Carr, Carringer, Chisholm, Clemens, Cochran, Crawford, Darby, Davis, Eldridge, Faison, Farmer, Freeman, Garrett, Gillespie, Glenn, Grills, Hakeem, Hale from Middle Tennessee, representing Jackson County and DeKalb County, Hardaway, Harris, Hawk, Hazelwood, Helton, Haynes, Hemmer, Hicks, Holsclaw, Howell, Hurt, Jernigan, Johnson C., Johnson G., Kelsing, Kumar, Lafferty, Lambreth, Leatherwood, Littleton, Lynn, Martin B., Martin G., McCollum, McKenzie, Miller, Mitchell, Moon, Parkinson, Powell, Powers, Reagan, Rapper, Reedy, Rudd, Rudder, Russell, Shaw, Sherrill, Slater, Stevens, Thompson, Todd, Towns, Vaughn, Vital, White, Whitson, Williams, representing Putnam County, Wright, Zachary, the sponsor of the bill, and Speaker of the House, Cameron Sexton, who undoubtedly wants to become the next governor. So remember that next time around when 2026 comes and he's trying to run for governor. Cameron Sexton voted for red flag laws. Republican Representatives Barrett, Kapicki, Fritz, Hill, Moody, Ritchie, and Warner were the only ones voting against this red flag gun bill. So 7 of your supposed conservative warriors in the House were the only ones that 7 were actual conservative warriors, I should say, and actually voted against red flag laws. Everyone else caved completely. Legislation must pass both chambers of the legislature before it can be sent to the governor's desk and signed into law. The corresponding Senate Bill 1673, sponsored by Senator Becky Massey of Republican Knoxville District 6, is scheduled to be heard in Senate Health and Welfare Committee next week. So to voice your support or opposition to SB 1673, use the information in the article to contact the members of the committee prior to their meeting this Wednesday, and I will post that in the description. So go to the description, click on the article. At the bottom of the article has all the contact for the senators in that committee, and hopefully if you pressure them politely but firmly, say that red flag laws and anything considered to be a red flag law or any similarity to it is dead on arrival in Tennessee and will ruin their political future. Hopefully, they will not even pick it up. So make sure to do that. Those are your marching orders for today. I went a little longer than I expected to, but there's a lot of great content in that article, so I highly recommend checking it out. Check out the Tennessee Conservative News. They are great people. I've had the pleasure of speaking with several of their journalists now, and slowly been becoming familiar with them, so I highly recommend checking them out. And tonight, if you are able to, feel free to join us for our Monday night live stream on Rumble, YouTube, X, and of course you can check the replay on your podcast platforms as well. We have Matt Reynolds, a former strongman, coming on to talk all about why Christians should be physically strong, and he's going to give you guys some strength training tips. So this guy's a total beast of a man, so I highly recommend checking out. It should be a whole lot of fun, and Michael will be joining me for what may be his last time in a while. For those of you who did not check our Substack, again, that's why you got to check Substack. I keep you up to date on all the things going on here at Forge and Anvil. That is forgeandanvil.substack.com. There is a free sign up for that to get free articles and have a neat location for all of our content. And then, of course, you can also pay to get some additional supporters-only episodes of In the Van and supporters-only articles. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate you listening. I hope you have a great Monday. Go out there and do work.